Hello, how are you doing there? This is Jeff, E.D.S. Inc., Shandon, and I want to welcome you to another video. Well, this is a video that I wasn't really planning on. We had a little mishap. Last night we were working on the shop, and we had moved all of our doors and everything out of the shop, and so we could build a stairwell. And my son and I did that yesterday, and I'll show some pictures of it after this introduction. But anyway, my son about 8 o'clock last night came driving in with the forklift, parked it, said, "Okay, Dad, I'm headed home." And I said, "Okay, I'll get all the doors and bring them in." And I went out to the forklift, and I couldn't back it. I couldn't make it go forward. It was like there was something under the wheels. So I looked down on both sides of the lift, and I didn't see anything in front of my drive wheels. I looked back at my steering wheels. I didn't see anything under those. And then I started turning the wheels, and I noticed that the one on the driver's side was moving properly. The one on the passenger side, or you would call that, forklift only has one person on it, but the way to define it, that wheel was not turning. It was cocked all the way over, and it wasn't moving back and forth. So it was acting like a stop. It was almost at it's probably about a 45-degree angle. And so that was preventing me from going forward or back. So I thought, oh no. I got down off the lift, and I saw a pin sitting there on the ground. I looked at the pin, saw that there'd been a cap on it, and I looked back underneath the wheel, and I could see where the cap was still fastened to the coupling. So I just took that off. I put it back on the cap. I welded it back on, took it over to the lathe, and I cleaned up my welds. And I thought, okay, I'll just stick that pin in that coupling. We're done. We're good. And so I tried to line up that coupling with the coupling at the wheel, and it was off, way off. They should have just met just like that, and that pin would have shot down right through the center of them and held the two together, and that wasn't the case. One was way below the other. So I looked back on underneath there, and I'll show you all this stuff when I'll take you over to the lift and show you. Look back under there, and it looked like there was a bearing surface of some sort that had been in there that was completely ripped away. So it had dropped the wheel down a ½ an inch lower than, or actually in comparison with your I don't know what the parts names are. I don't even have a manual for that lift. But anyway, the steering, we'll just not worry about what it's called. I'll show you later. At any rate, it should have been up another ½ an inch, and it wasn't because of that bearing surface. Now, I don't know if the main pin was damaged or not in all this. I have no clue. So about 10 o'clock last night, I gave up and went home. Locked up the gates and around the shop, and checked the weather report. Found out it wasn't going to rain at all. That we didn't have to worry about that, so I could leave the stuff outside, which I hate to do because we get people out here pilfering around. So anyway, so this morning I came on in, and we're going to pull the parts off the lift. I probably won't show you much of that, but once we get them off the lift and we see what we have to do to fix them, if there's any lathe work or anything like that, then we'll video that. Sorry I didn't show fixing that pin last night. I was just trying to get done and get home, and so I wasn't able to take care of that for you. But we'll try to document everything this time. If there's any machining on the lathe or on the mill, we'll show that on this video. So that's what we have going. What I'll do is I'll take you and I'll show you real quick what we've been doing here in the shop. We've got our stairs up to the loft end, and my son and I worked on that yesterday and got it all done. We weren't looking for beauty, we're just looking for function. We got it done, it's complete. So we'll show you that, and then we'll go over to the forklift and I'll show you the parts and stuff that's gone wrong with that. So here's my stairwell. We put this in yesterday. We got a piece of 4x4 by 3/8 angle iron, and I made a deck up there with that. It's bolted to the building on 2 places, and then I welded this angle iron to it with you can see little here underneath here. You can see I welded angles across to match the wood on this side, and then I had a bunch of 1 1/4 plywood that I'd gotten from an auction, and we cut those into the steps. So at the top we have 1 1/4 plywood up there on the upper deck, and then we have 1 1/4 on all the steps all the way down. So that solved our problem with stairwell. So I've got this kind of jacked up. I've got a light in here. So you can see, hopefully, let me get the light in here better. You can see this coupling right back here is supposed to slip over this here. And this is the pin that came off right here. This one here. So this pin was supposed to go down into this hole, and which it does with a little bit of force, and join the two together. And that's not the case. And why? Well, if we look over here, we see this is some sort of a bearing surface that is completely gone. So now if you look down here, you can see how this whole thing's up higher than what it should be, and that's what's causing our issue here. So what I have to do is I have to pull this apart, pull this pin out, which I hope is still good. If not, we'll have to turn one. First I have to pull this whole wheel off, check these bearing surfaces and make sure that they're good. I'm worried about this here because you can see where, hopefully you can see where that's not even, and that may have made that oblong. If that's the case, I may have to pull that whole arrangement in here out and put a bearing surface in there. Anyway, I'm not happy, but it's something that has to be done. So whatever we do, I'll make sure that we video it so you can watch along with us. Okay, here's what I got. I got the wheel off. Here it is. That's the pin I had to pop out. Now I checked this pin. There's a little bit of wear right up in here, but it's not bad. It's not scored that badly. I think this pin will be just fine, so I don't have to remake a pin. But what we have that's an issue is between this, the top of this, and this spot right here on the steering armature. There was a thrust bearing, and that thrust bearing is what's left of it is here. What happened to the bearings and everything else, who knows. And then there was a washer here that was between that was sitting right up in here, and then there's a washer down here. Now both these washers are wiped out. You can see that there's bends in them, so they're not going to be any good. So I'm going to have to remake these washers. This one here is extremely coarse on this side, and I'm going to have to figure out a way to make a thrust bearing. There's no way for me to find one today, this being Sunday, for a Heister forklift. So what my thought is, for a temporary fix until I can get a bearing, is to get myself a piece of bronze, and I'll mill it out, and I'll set it between two washers, and I'll have that greased up, and hopefully that'll get me a couple of days work out of this thing. So anyway, so that's what we're going to do. I'm going to see if I can find some bronze material back in the shop properly. I know that I've purchased some in the past, and so I might have some back there, and we'll see what we can make up. First, I'm going to have to determine how thick that bearing has to be, and I'm really concerned about the weight. I don't think it'll last very long because of the pressure that's on that. We've got all the weight of this forklift on that little bearing, and I don't think bronze. I think bronze will end up crushing, to be honest with you. But we'll see. What I may do is put it in the housing, make a metal housing, press it into that, and then have it between that and the pin, and perhaps that'll work for me. Okay, so here's what I found. The distance between here and here is 3.5473, or 9 millimeters is what it is. This is all metric, unfortunately. The pin diameter is 3 millimeters, and what I'm using to measure this is E.D.S. It's a German-made caliper, and it measures both metric and inch. The bottom line is inches, the top line is in meters or millimeters. So and then of course you've got your dial here, and on all your metric, this dial was reading 0. It was just dead nuts on with the dimensions on the metric. So it's all metric throughout this whole thing. So anyway, that gives me some information. I've got a little bit of concern here on the underside of this. There's a little lip. I'm going to have to get some dimensions on that, and because it's recessed in there. So I'm going to have to go get some of my other stirrup tools and measure that and figure out what dimension that is so I can make that work. So anyway, I'll go get those dimensions, I'll figure out what that is, and then we'll have enough to get started with our laying out for the parts that we need to make. Okay, I've been able to figure out what that recess is by using my tenths micrometer as a vernier. Now this is a Chinese made unit, but I did check it out, and it was reading right on, so I went ahead and used that. I found that the width across the is 1.8424, and by using my Starrett 445 depth gauge, and I was able to determine that it was 0.15 thick. So what I first did on my hole, I used my Starrett inside dimension tool, so I could use this to mic it. So anyway, I found out that the relief in here is 0.15, the diameter is 0.18424. So that gives me information on what that relief is up in this part here. That's up in here. So I'll have to make a part that'll fit up into that relief. so it has a bearing surface on there. So now we'll go to the table and we'll figure out what we're going to do. Okay, I've got the part for the first washer that I'm making in the lathe. It's I have to take it down to 1.84 inches. This is a little bit over 2.5, so we've got a little ways to go. And I'm going to just take this back about 1/4 inch or so. The rest of this will be used for another part. I'm going to make a shielding part over the bronze. So this is the brass part, and then we'll make a bronze part. I mean, this will be a steel part. I think this is 4140 shaft, and then we'll make a bronze part that'll fit inside of it, and we'll press it into it. So anyway, so we're going to go ahead and we're going to take a little bit off of this and let her go. There's touch off here. Okay. Take it in line. Yeah, I think I'm gonna want to check her out and see what I got now. Oh shoot, I busted my tip. You got to see that on camera. How'd you like that? Okay, I'm gonna get my measurement. I'll check that and I'll get back. Okay, we're going to now give ourselves some do some drilling here. This is a mixture of turpentine and oil. Actually, I'm going to slow this down. As we attempt to drill this. I'll get over on the other side so you all can see. I won't be in your way. This is 1 1/64 inch. Okay, we're now going to start our inside cut. Down another. I think I need to bring this up a little bit. Let me seems like it's a little bit low. Not cutting right. So we'll bring her up just a little bit. I'll bring her right back as soon as I get her up. Okay, we brought her up a little bit and that seemed to help. should have our hole. Let's take this out of the way and nice. Okay, good. That'll work. Now we have to get the between this edge and the face, I need 0.15 is what my depth is. So that's what I want to achieve here. Let's see, do I have this set properly for it? Pretty sure we did it this time. Let's check her out. We're on. We're on. Okay. Now I have to determine how far back I'm going to cut this off at, and cut it off not too far past that. So just go ahead and we'll put a cutoff tool in here. Bring you back when I'm ready to cut her off.